Welcome back to So What's Your Process, the show where we talk with creatives from all fields about what they do and how they do it. I'm Allie Dalsimer.
I'm Kyle Dalsimer.
And Kyle, you have brought us an amazing guest today.
Absolutely. Well, you probably know our guest today best from his performance as Big Red in the hit Disney show, High School Musical, the series. He is also the co-host of the very popular podcast, Let's Talk About That. Please welcome to the show, my friend and yours, it's Larry Saperstein.
Hi.
Hey, Larry,
Hey, Larry.
welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, you guys. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, we're so thrilled to have you here, and I'm excited to talk a little bit with you. I did get to see you in the show that you and Kyle did. At the end of 6, that was really fun. It's
25. Yeah.
25. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I'm jumping ahead already.
Don't let the clock go that
right?
much. Oh my goodness.
It's crazy. Yeah, so anyway, I had a question for you because when Kyle was telling me a little bit about you, he said that you really have a background in music and dancing, that you are a world-class tap dancer, which and we definitely want to talk about that in a minute. But then my only experience, of course, is from your podcast, watching it, which it's a great podcast for anybody who's interested, and of course from acting. And so I was wondering, as I was thinking about talking with you, how does having a background so heavily in dance and music and tap, how does that inform your acting and in your podcast?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes from different places. I think I started through dancing. I mean, my mom is a music teacher, and she played classical guitar, and she's a singer. And so even when I was very young, I was kind of surrounded by like music in that way. And my dad was an actor as well and would do like community theater shows. So it was kind of always like a family thing for all of us. And dance was kind of my first way into that, even before I really was old enough to understand kind of like what theater was. Like I started taking dance classes when I was like 6, and I didn't really do my first show until many, many, many years later when I was 8. So for me, dance was like a more, I guess you could say, like tactile way of getting involved in performance. That is kind of one of the things I still to this day love about tap dance specifically, is it's very tactile. You know what I mean? It's percussion, it's percussive. There's no words. It's a lot of tap dancers say it's like it's talking with your feet, and having a conversation with your feet. And so I think in that way it's very pure. And it's very raw. And I think and it's also very technical. So it allows me to kind of sink my teeth into something that kind of goes beyond the verbal. You know what I mean? Like there are no really words to describe everything that there is in tap dance. Even, when I am learning a combination in tap dance or teaching a combination, it's like you're speaking in rhythm. You're not necessarily speaking in words. And so I think and that's really all dance, obviously. You're not using words. So I think there is a level of understanding the physical and understanding conveying emotions through the physical that I learned from dance from a very young age. And I think even today, as a comedic actor, there's so much physicality in, when I was on High School Musical, they would always say like, they would always say to me, like, you always understand the rhythm of a scene. You always understand the pacing and when exactly you should move. And you're very consistent, which I think was very helpful for everyone involved. It made me a better actor in that way. And I think a lot of that comes from the dance background.
No, that's super, super interesting. And I guess that leads me to asking, do you approach your acting then in the same way that do you see them as a similar process in telling the story as a dancer and telling the story as an actor?
I'm very physical with the way that I do things on stage. I think that like for me, it's really hard for me to learn lines before I know the blocking. Like I need to be like walking through in the space. And then it's so interesting, like I'm sure you probably didn't notice this, Kyle, because you were kind of in your own hell on Dear Evan Hansen, which we had an amazing time, but you had so much to learn, so you probably didn't notice this. But I kind of hold my book a lot later than a lot of other people do, just because it's really hard for me to be off book until I know, like, okay, this is where I am, this is what I'm seeing, this is how this flows rhythmically, and with my body. So I think, yeah, I really do always come at it from a physical place. Yeah.
That's super interesting. That's super interesting. I actually had this vision of, the movie Happy Feet when you were first talking.
Oh yeah.
He just like has to express himself that way.
That was one of the
kinda-
movies that made me love tap dance. I think I was already
I love that.
tapping at that point, but it was like I saw that and I was like, love that.
Oh,
Gotta do that.
that's actually really interesting. That
Yeah.
your role model was this penguin.
Spirit animal.
Spirit animal. This is very cool. So that's interesting because I was, one of the things I was wondering about is like when actors in general, when they get stuck, what do they, what do they reach for? And I'm guessing for you, it's physical movement. You maybe put yourself in that place. Is that kind of the process if you get stuck somewhere?
Yeah, and that's like the amazing thing about theater is that it is so choreographed. And like even, Dear Evan Hansen is a show that is so like down to the beat with like you need to stand in this exact spot and wait until this exact moment to turn your head, and then you're like in another scene. And that for me just like really keeps the momentum. It actually, I think, prevents me from getting stuck a lot of the time because you just have to push the flow. Like the rhythm is so important and the flow is so important. So it's kind of just like you just shed it and move on to the next thing. And if you mess up, you do it better the next time. I think in TV and film, it's a little bit different because the rhythm is manufactured later, right? Like you are doing your scene, but then in the edit is when they find really the flow and the pacing. But I was on a sitcom, for lack of a better word. It was a comedy. So the pacing of a comedy is just so important. And that's always the note. The note is always just pace it up, keep the energy, keep it moving. That tends to matter more than the minutia of intention and those kinds of things. Just specifically on a television comedy, because when you do a TV show, you start to get into this flow of like, I've played this character now for 12 episodes and he is the same character and I'm going on this journey with this character. So every script is new, right? So you're less thinking about like, what is my intention on this line and what is he thinking in this moment, because you start to the line between you and the character really starts to be blurred as you've played the same character for 2 years or 4 years or 10 years. And so it's really just like, what is the scene? How are we getting through the scene? What is the timing of this? It becomes more technical in that way, which I loved, which I really latch on to.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, that is actually interesting. It actually makes me think of a couple things. And the first question that comes to mind is, so, I mean, you can't do this in theater per se, but unless you're bootlegging, I guess. But but in television, given that you're so movement based, do you ever watch yourself perform? Do you ever watch a take or whatever they call it and and not in terms of like critiquing, but in terms of maybe better understanding your character, watching your own movements? Is that something that's a thing?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily from take to take, because there's just not time for that. Like if the way a film set is set up is like, if the scene is where I am, right, and we're in an apartment, like they call it video village. That's where like the monitors are, where they're watching, where the director is sitting, the producers and the showrunner and all of those people are sitting watching all of the monitors. They're probably like 50 to 100 feet away behind a wall on the other side, and there's lighting in the way, and like you can't always get to it. If it is something really technical where so we did a couple of numbers on the show. There was one in particular called Something in the Air that was a one take. It was a oneer. So that was all about the rhythm and the choreography, not only of us, but also the choreography of the camera and the crew, because they were basically, we went down the hallway and like into the library and out of the library and down into the cafeteria and around. So it was like we were following like different characters popping in and out like during this song. And so we would do a section that they chopped it up into like 3 sections, and then it was spliced together to look like it was all one take. And we would do a section, and then if there was a problem or something wasn't right, like we would kind of all gather around and be like, okay, this needs to be faster or slower, or we need to hold here. But in a general, which was very cool, and the end result was amazing. It's one of my favorites from the show, just because it was like a technical feat, and it was so pure. So I love that one. But from a general, like in a general scene, I don't think I'm really thinking of that as much. And when the show first came out, I watched like every episode, more just because it was like, oh my God, it's a TV show and I'm so proud of this. As it went on and on, I think I watched less and less, because I think there's just a level of trust that you build with the people around you, and you start to know, like, you are so much more informed season 2 than you are season 1, because season 2, now you've potentially seen season 1, and like, okay, this is the way the showrunner, this is what his or her, in my case, his vision is like for the show. This is how he likes it paced. This is where he's going to add in music. This is what the music is going to sound like between this scene and the next. And like, we didn't know those things in the first season, but we do know those things in the second season. And so then you start to like play into some of that. And it becomes just more gelled. So as the seasons progress, your performance just gets better and better, really. And you just start to trust it more.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And also, in addition, you did say a little bit ago that you also start to sort of become one with the character.
Yes.
Right? You said that. So
and I mean, this wasn't your question, but you also start to anticipate what the other people are going to do. Like, so Julia Lester, Tony nominee, was played my girlfriend on the show. Ashlyn was her character's name. And I mean, by season 2, we could do a scene in like 3 takes, because it's like, I know her, and not only do I know her, I also know Ashlyn, right? Like, it's like, I know Big Red, and I also know Ashlyn, and I also know Julia. And so I can kind of sort of guess like how Ashlyn is going to respond to Big Red, and it can really just fade away. Like, the acting part of it fades away, and it really just becomes authentic. And again, it becomes more about like the notes at that point become more about like, hey, so we just need you to punch this moment of the scene because that's playing into something that's happening in 3 episodes that you don't know about. Or we just need to pace this up because this episode is going to run a little long. So it becomes less about like true acting notes, if that makes sense. And it and because because the acting is just the base. The acting is the foundation for like what happens next. It's similar to like when you're in the room in a show, in a stage show, and then you go into tech, and like the notes are no longer as much about the acting. The notes now become like, you need to get here faster because of the lighting, right? And the acting now is just like the base of the foundation of what happens.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I do want to ask, and I know you have so many questions, and we also want to talk about the podcast, but I'm still fascinated by this whole process. So given what you said about really becoming one with a character, I'm wondering, have you ever experienced a time when a character revealed something about you or taught you something that you didn't expect?
Yeah, I mean, you know, what was interesting, with Big Red, I was kind of growing up at the same time as he was growing up, even though the character was younger than me. I was kind of coming more into myself. It gave me so much confidence, just that process and being on the show. And I, you know, I knew I was a queer person, but I was not really at a point where I was comfortable talking about that like publicly. And the show really gave me that confidence to talk about it publicly, like online. And then the character kind of followed suit. And in the third and subsequently the fourth season, like there was a huge like queer kind of bisexual arc with Big Red. And I think that like, had it not been for Big Red as a character, I wouldn't have had the confidence to do that and to tell that story. I don't know what I would have, like the direction I would have gone in had I not had that character. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to like, it might be a cop out to just say that everything kind of ties back to Big Red, but in some ways it kind of does, because it was just so formative for me because it was such a big thing. And also personally, I've kind of been all over the map. Like I haven't always been an actor. Like I went to college to do design for theater. So I was kind of at a point then when I was really not going to continue with acting. I was really thinking of going down the path of doing lighting design and projection video design for theater, and kind of I was thinking of transitioning that into theater directing. So in a way, like Big Red kind of reminded me that I was an actor. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I can't really imagine you as a behind the scenes person. You're just such a you know, front facing personality.
Well, I appreciate that, but I mean, I still to this day I love directing. Kyle might know a little bit. Like I was, when we were in tech, and even on High School Musical, like any chance that I get, I am watching the thing that we're doing. Like I love sitting, like I brought like my, you know, Nintendo Switch and my laptop to tech, and I never even opened them because I was like, why would I play a video game when I can sit in the theater and watch tech? Because it's so interesting. And it's the same thing with High School Musical. It's like, why would I play a video game when I can go and sit behind the monitors when I'm not on camera and get paid to learn about this, you know? And so I love, and I would ask questions, and they would give me a headset, and I would watch scenes that I wasn't in. And I love watching that stuff. I love watching something come together.
That's how you know you're in the right field.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. I wanna ask you another thing about production, and you and I talked about this a little while ago, but it's really fascinating to me. So, you know, you shot High School Musical, the series. You know, the first season came out in 2019, and then you continued into the pandemic.
Yeah.
in shooting, and I'm really curious if you can share more about that just filming a TV show throughout the pandemic.
It was horrible.
What was it? It was horrible.
It was horrible. I mean, it was horrible, and it was no one's fault. It was the worst. I mean, it was like 6 feet apart. We had to like wear so you have to wear a mask, right? And then you're wearing your mask until the moment that you're on camera. But the problem is the mask wipes away all the makeup on the bottom half of your face. So now you take the mask off, and now there's like 15 people coming up to you fixing your makeup 100 times a day, which they normally wouldn't have to do. But now the point of contact is like they're now really close to you. So now this was like all at a time where like it was all about limiting contact, limiting points of it's like feels so foreign to us now. Like I'm still surprised that we have been able to like bounce back as like people from this, because there was a time when I thought that was going to be like the rest of our lives, but it was, I mean, so all of, and a set, a film set, a TV set is like the worst place for like minimizing points of contact. You know what I mean? It's like everyone is talking to each other all the time. And then to go from season 1 where we had all this freedom, like you could walk around, you could go get crafty and food, and you could kind of bop around and explore, and then to go from like that to then having like basically no freedom because you just have to be like in your contained like little box was horrible. And then on top of that, like we were in Salt Lake City, and we weren't allowed to have any contact with people like outside of our pod. So we were getting COVID tested 3 times a week. So if someone wasn't getting COVID tested 3 times a week, and even really if they were, but they weren't so they broke it up into different zones. So there was like zone A, which was like all of the actors, and then all of the people that have face-to-face interactions with the actors. So that was like hair and makeup, and essentially directors, and like the showrunner was like zone A. Then there was like zone B. So these people are still getting tested 3 times a week. But if you're there were all these just crazy rules. If you're interacting with an actor, you have to wear a mask and a face shield. And then when it was like the variation, the Omicron, or maybe it was earlier than that, it was like now you have to wear 2 masks and a face shield, because it was crazy. It was bonkers. And then it was Halloween, Thanksgiving, New Year's, Christmas, New Year's Eve. We were in Utah. We could not leave, just spending that with each other. And then like imagine, Kyle, we did during Dear Evan Hansen, we were all staying in the same place. And we would like hang out a lot in the common room. Yeah. But imagine if that was our only source of physical or like social interaction for 8 months.
Oh, I think we would have all hated each other.
It was just so difficult, and it was no one's fault. It just was hard. And I'm so glad that we're not in that anymore. And it's a miracle that season 2 is as good as it is. Because that was what was happening during all of that. Crazy. Yeah. It was craziness.
It's seriously crazy.
That is crazy. Did that experience, because that's a pretty heavy traumatic experience professionally, did that experience change, excuse me, or influence your actual craft, like how you act, how you approach characters, or was there another time maybe where some incident or event changed the course of how you did things?
I don't know if it impacted like my process of acting, but I definitely did have to like take a step back, and like I needed to like return to life for a minute and like recharge, and then shortly after we were done with that season, I wound up moving to LA full time. So then my life kind of just had this big upheaval. So I do feel like it was almost a turning point in my life. Like there was kind of a before then and an after then in some ways. But I think like there are so many things that inform our process that we don't necessarily do intentionally. Like living life informs so much of being an artist in any way. And so there has to be some ways that it affected me as an actor. I don't know if I can truly like, quantify them or like if I can truly identify them, but I am a different person after that. So of course, like it has to have affected
Mhm.
my performance in some way.
Right. So it's even more profound than shifting something within your process that actually changed you as a person, which influences everything.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
does make me does make me think about something else though. Going back to the fact that you started, very young, 6, at the ripe old age of 8, you were
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
a seasoned fella. Is there something that you did when you were young that you still do now, or
Mm.
alternately, are there things you did when you were young and you're like, "Oh, never, I'm never doing those again. They just don't work," or something?
That's a good question. I I do think I learned a lot of that kind of physicalness when I was younger. And I think that just is kind of ingrained in how I see uh a piece, whether it is theater or television or film. Like I do kind of see it from that physical place, and I think that is because of when I was younger. Um, it's funny because it's like now I'm thinking about Dear Evan Hansen, and the truth is there's actually a lot of stuff that I have shed, that I didn't do because it had been a long time since I had done theater when we did Dear Evan Hansen. I was kind of me getting back into it. Um, for me, honestly, like the getting ready like process is maybe something that I've still kept. Like the girls would always laugh at us and say that our dressing room was boring, but I um I'm not someone who like needs like quiet. Like there are people who like right before they go on stage they need to like center themselves and focus before they like physically walk onto stage. For me, I think I take that time like when I arrive. Like and I did this on High School Musical too. Like I like to arrive 15 to 30 minutes before my call time, right? Cuz and it's even harder for theater cuz like call time is 30 minutes before the show. So it's like you get ready and you go. In TV and film, it's a little bit different. If my call time was 7 a.m., like I might not actually be on camera until 9, right? So you have like a lot more time to like get ready to act. But regardless, I just there's like a peacefulness that I find of like arriving early, kind of before everyone else does, and seeing everyone come in and like noticing everyone as they arrive and um like centering myself before all of that happens because it becomes chaos it becomes chaos in a great way, in a magical way. But like I need to like enter that intentionally. And if I can do that, then I don't have to worry as much about like backstage and then I'm free even more to like make those jokes backstage and have that fun backstage and let that be like the fun space. Whereas like the dressing room and like the arriving is like the more grounded space for me. And I think I've always done that. And it's funny, like when I was in high school, we had all of these, theater kiddie, like tradition things that don't do anymore. Some of them were wildly inappropriate, but then some of them were really wholesome and wonderful. Like there's a song called River in Judea that we would gather around. Everyone, the cast and crew, would get into like the chorus room and sing that song before every performance of like everything that we did. And that was the ritual. And I don't do that anymore because that was specific to that group. But I think those kinds of experiences teach you about grounding yourself before a performance. And so I think it's maybe that energy that I've taken.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I want to ask you about, and it's something that a lot of people always talk about with the difference in acting between on camera and on stage. But it's interesting with you because, as we've already talked about, a lot of that really does work in both, and it both comes from a physical place, whether you're in front of a camera or on a stage. But
Yeah.
I'm wondering for you, do you feel like there's a difference in your acting between doing something in theater and doing something on camera? And what is that for you?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm still thinking of like the beats, and the rhythm of it, but I think it's more like one of on camera, I'm really thinking about like my face and like what are the beats in my face. Whereas like on stage, I don't worry about that as much. And it's more just like, what are the beats in my body? And like, when am I turning and when am I looking? And there are things that you find as you do it over and over again. There's like on TV, like you just don't do the scenes as many times. I remember on like at like performance 13 of 20, I figured out this like one line in Good For You that if I said a certain way, it was that like I thought you only hang out with me because you're to get your car insurance. And I was like, so by like performance 13, I figured out if I say this in this exact way, it gets a laugh. If I do it a different way, it doesn't get a laugh. But if I say it in that way, it gets a laugh.
Oh, interesting.
I don't get 13 takes on TV to like figure that out. Do you know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
You've got to be there sooner.
Right. So, and it's also just like throw shit against the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
It's like you just got to do it differently every time because they already got it. Like the way that you did it the first time, they got it that way.
Right.
So
they can
it
watch
doesn't
it as many
benefit.
times as they want.
Yeah, like it doesn't benefit them or you to do it the same way the second time. Like it benefits everyone to do it differently and also still hit your marks and all of that technical stuff. But like, do a different facial expression, do a different inflection. Whereas like in theater, you are like it's like this. You're refining it down to a point so that it can be as exact as possible by performance, 100. But like it's way more scattered on camera, I think.
Yeah. And it's an interesting sort of like juxtaposition there because, on camera, you are, especially for a TV show, you're playing the character in so many different iterations with new episodes and new lines.
So many different scenarios.
And so much stuff going on, so you can get a more thorough understanding. But in theater, you're doing the same thing every single night for sometimes months.
I don't have to imagine what Big Red's bedroom looks like. I don't have to imagine what Big Red's locker looks like. I don't have to imagine who Big Red's mom is. I don't have to imagine where Big Red works because all of those things are things I did in the show, right? Like I had a bedroom set, I had a locker, I had a mom, I had a pizza place that was like my family's pizza place. I had a girlfriend. Like Jared, in Dear Evan Hansen, you never see his bedroom. You never see his locker. He has all of those things, but like that it's all imagined versus like real. So when more and more things are real and you see them, like the whole thing becomes more real and you just start like living those experiences. And he has so many different experiences versus like 1 2 hour and 30-minute thing that happens over and over again. You know what I mean?
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So we've talked with a couple actors and there's something about like some are like, I bring me to the role and I influence the role. And then some are like, I look at the role or I find a costume piece and then that informs how I interpret the role. And I'm not really getting that sense from you at all. And how is it that you get into a character? Because you even said like you merge and become one. Like how does that happen? Where is your entry point into a character? Is it
it can be different. Like it is different a lot of times. Like for Dear Evan Hansen, it was like those glasses. Like I loved those glasses, and I thought it was like, okay, I get that these are the glasses that this kid wears, and so like, what does that mean? I didn't feel as much of an attachment to like the clothes in that specific circumstance, but like with Big Red, like I remember I never did my hair the way that they did Big Red's hair. And actually now it's kind of funny because you asked me like what I took from the character. I actually do my hair like that pretty much all the time now, mostly just because I liked it and it made me look a certain way that I felt I really liked. But I really had never done my hair that way before. And then when they did my hair, they kind of like put it up, and I was like, and they did like almost like a blowout, like they blew it up, and I was like, oh, okay, like I get that, like I understand like who this is from that. Wow. And then it's like more, and then with that it was like more and more and more, like even like the first season costumes were so different. They actually got a different costume designer between season 1 and 2. So then it was like the wardrobe became more, we all came together and we like kind of all started to agree on like who this is. Cause I think like in season 1, it was like, well, the wardrobe wanted it to be this way. And maybe that was not totally aligned with like how they were writing the character. And maybe not also as aligned with like who I thought he was. But then in season 2, we're like, okay, he actually would wear this over this. And also like when you are doing a TV show, like just for a tangent about costumes, like, so there's 12 episodes, right? And maybe to say like an average in each episode, you might wear 2 costumes or 3 costumes, depending on how it's written, right? So that's like 36 or so costumes, but I might try on 60 or 70, right? Like, and then it's just like clothes that don't they build a closet. It's like, it's not like building a costume for each scene. It's like, this character is a high schooler, so what does he have in his closet? And then it's like, oh my god, my shoes, like I get shoes that maybe I had 5 pairs of shoes, right? And then it's like we start building outfits just like a real person, right? You go in your closet and you're like, I want to wear these shoes today and these pants, and so then the outfits start like, and then this is also different for maybe a show that's more stylized, right? Like ours was like high schoolers, it was real people, but you start to be like, oh my god, these are my shoes and these are my pants, and so then it's like even that starts to take on a life, so it's like I think I've gone off on a tangent of what your question actually was.
No,
this is great.
I mean, maybe, but here's the thing that I just sort of got from that, because you talked about how in theater you're doing the same show over and over and over, and then you hone in till you finally get it. But what I've just heard you say is, even though the dialogue and the scripts change, that is exactly what's happening.
Yeah, it's different honing.
Yeah, you're honing in and deciding who these characters are, what they wear, how they act, how they wear their hair, how
you're like learning about people. You're like learning about a person, and you're getting to know a person rather than like a structured like thing with beats.
It's the world instead of the words almost.
Yeah.
I just love that.
That's fascinating. I love that.
Yeah,
it's more akin to the process of like developing a musical, right? Like when you're changing the words all the time and you're changing the songs, and like those experiences are wonderful. Like I love that because it's more akin to that, like, who is this person, we're finding that, and then you lock it in. You know?
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, and that does lead me to a question that is something that I'm not sure if you've experienced this before. Have you ever had a time where your vision of the character and something that is designed or directed or something that you've been given by the creative or design team doesn't align with your vision of who this character is? And if you have, how do you manage that?
Yeah, how do you handle that?
Well, unfortunately, like on a TV show, like, yeah, there were definitely times where I was like, oh, I really thought he would do this, or I just don't agree with like this argument that he's having. It's not what I had hoped, where I had hoped he would go. The unfortunate reality is you kind of just shut up and do it. Like, I hate to say that, but but it's like, it's not in those moments. I was not in a position where I felt like saying those things would benefit me, like in any way, or like it wasn't going to benefit the show. Like it just needed to be because there's so many voices involved. You know what I mean? Like, there's Disney, there's the executives of the show, there's the costume people, there's this, the producers, there's production, there's time, like there's so many voices. And I don't know if there was ever something where it was like I felt so strongly against something that I like had to speak up against it. That also might just be like my personality. Like I think there were other people on the show that maybe did that more, and I don't want to speak to, like, I don't know exactly what their conversations were, but yeah, I just try to like live within the constraints of what I'm given, because one thing that I learned from being in design school, and theater design school at that, is like there are so many other people that work on shows and that work to have their art and their creative, vision come onto the stage. And what I think about some sweater vest is going to do more harm to the person that worked really hard to get that on stage, and to the director that likes it, than it is going to do to good that it's going to do to my ego, or my, like, fine, if they think that he wears this sweater vest, then he wears the sweater vest. Like, I have to be a good enough actor to not let that affect everything and not derail the whole thing, Maybe when I'm Timothée Chalamet, like, we can have a different conversation about it, but I just don't think that's really like my job. And that's part of why I love directing, though, is because if I'm a director, I can say, no, I don't think that he has that. Like, that is your job as a director, right? Like, I don't know if that is really your job as an actor, because the truth is the costume designer will say, oh yeah, sure, we can change that. And then they're going to go back to their trailer and they're going to talk shit about you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, nobody wants that, in my opinion.
That's interesting. So your process for that is just sort of, you make it work because it's what as an actor.
That. Yeah, he makes it work, but it's also I feel like part of your process is you like to stay in your swim lane, because when you're a director, you do change things in director, but when you're an actor, you're like, no, I'm going to be on the receiving end of this, interpret it and provide back. So,
and I mean, if I'm asked my opinion, I will give my opinion. Like, but I just, it's less that I'd like to stay in my swim lane, but it's more just like I am always thinking about everyone else's process as well. Like, and it is, first and foremost, it is a collaborative medium. Like, you cannot make a theater production without many hands, and you cannot make a television show without many hands. And it's not right to believe that my voice on, an article of clothing, or, whatever, that's just an example, is like the final voice, when it's like, someone else spent a lot of time thinking about that and working on it.
Love that. I love that I feel like that makes you a very giving actor as well, not just collaborative, but giving as well. And I really like that. And it is a team sport.
Oh yeah.
Acting, as they say. So listen, I would very much like to switch gears for a minute here and talk about your podcast.
Yes,
Because,
let's do it.
you know, I tuned into it recently because, you know, it's like, oh, you're going to be a guest. And I was like, oh, okay, then check out this podcast. And it is funny and
It's
irreverent.
hilarious.
It's really great. I love it. I love your intro.
you.
It's really awesome. And I, you know, when I was watching it, it's clear that you research your guests and whatnot, but I had a sense that you're just sort of free flowing. And I wondered, do you know, when you're going to bring on a guest, do you actually plan out questions? Do you choreograph how the session might work, or you just like go in, sit down and let it go?
We kind of, well, so Jacob and I work really, really well together, and that's part of the reason. Jacob is my partner, for those of you who don't know, and so we do this podcast together called Let's Talk About That, and we have episodes where we have guests, and then we have episodes that are just the two of us where we kind of banter and build our kind of comedic language for the show, and so we kind of build our inside jokes, and then sometimes we bring them into our interviews, and I feel like one episode builds on the next. So it's always kind of like you're hanging out with us and you're like learning like what our humor is and what our jokes are and what we like to talk about. And the reason that we call it Let's Talk About That is because we wanted it to be free flowing enough where if someone, because actors are always being asked questions about their show. And I just remember doing press and thinking like, God, I really just want to talk about roller coasters right now. And I can't, you know, and I have to talk about, I have to talk about who pulls the most pranks on set. It's like, nobody pulls pranks on set. It's work. Like, but I have to answer those questions for, you know, Tiger Beat now. And not that, I mean, that stuff is fun. I did have fun with some of that stuff, but I also want to create a space where like, people that we interview can talk about the things they want to talk about, rather than having to talk about their like show for an hour. And so we call it Let's Talk About That, because if someone brings up a topic that we want to talk about that's enticing to us and we want to go off on a tangent, it's like, oh, let's talk about that. Let's talk, you know, like, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. That's why like our interview is like our intro music is like, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Cause it's like all of the different topics that kind of like get thrown at you in a conversation, and like how, and can you like latch onto them and have fun with that. So Jacob and I will kind of sit and be like, okay, we need to talk about, you know, their show that they're on. And oh, we found out that they went to this college, and you know they're from New York City. Like, let's talk about that because we have that in common. So it's like, what do we have in common with the person, and then that becomes like more natural. And then of course, like, you know, it's just like any interaction when you say like, do you love board games? Because we love board games. And then they're like, oh my God, I love board games. It's like, well, now you're talking about board games for 20 minutes. And then they just feel super relaxed because now you have like a point of connection. And so that's what we try to find with every guest. And it does help that some of them are our friends too, you know, but yeah.
Or you just talk about Halloween costumes.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
There we go. No, and I think that there's something really cool because, you know, it does have that sort of free flowing energy, but it also does kind of have, in a similar way to what you were talking about with dancing and with your acting. And I think this kind of underlies your entire process as a creative, is it does have that rhythm with the, you know, with your banter and with the conversations between you and Jacob, and then looping people in. It very much has that rhythm going on that you talked about. And I feel like that is kind of what underlays your entire process as a creative is finding the rhythm of the story that you're telling, whether it's your podcast, whether it's the dancing, whether it's your acting.
Thanks. You know, I maybe didn't think about that until this. So maybe this is something that I learned from this chat. But yeah, actually, like now that you say it, like the rhythm of the podcast, I think is like, it's finding that, like it took us a little bit of time. Also, like, you know, we've now done like over 60 episodes. So like you just find it as you go. But, yeah, that was definitely something that we found. I think it's, you know, I always came from the place of like comedy, and comedy is just so rhythm like focused. And you can have a great joke, and if you deliver it wrong, you might not get a laugh. So it's always about finding the rhythm. And so yeah, interesting that um comes in terms of like tap dance, and then also like visual, like the visual kind of choreography of a show, and also the kind of rhythm of delivering lines and things like that.
Well,
Yeah, it is interesting.
They say the secret to good comedy is to take it very seriously. So
Yeah.
you've done so much and you've evolved and you're still young. But I'm wondering if your 6, 8, 10-year-old self could look at you now, what do you think he would say?
I think that he would be just like, so I don't think he would really even be able to process like what I've done. I never pictured that I would like live in LA. I always thought I would live in New York, um and I think my life has gone just like so zigzag to like what I thought I would do. And yeah, I mean, I remember like I used to like think like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I played like one of the characters like younger like cousin, like, or like just like on a Disney show or like whatever. And then to be like, oh no, you didn't have to play like a character's younger cousin. Like you were a main character on a show. Like that was like High School Musical. Like, High School Musical came out, I was 8. So
Right.
so it's like to walk into that cafeteria and like see it. I mean, that is just like crazy. I don't even know if I ever thought that I would do that though. That wasn't even like on the radar. Like I just wanted to like be in shows.
Right.
So the fact that I still am in shows, and the other thing is like as we grow up, it's like there were so many kids, especially when I was like 10 to like 15 range. Like I was auditioning as like a kid actor in the city, and there were so many kids that like would get a lot of stuff and I wouldn't necessarily. And I kind of had this mentality that like maybe I wasn't as good as them, or like maybe I wasn't cut out for it. And then it's so interesting like to turn around and be like, well, I got this big other thing, and some of them decided that they love politics and like are doing that. It's like not everyone is still an actor from that time, and I think that will happen like more and more as we enter like each kind of decade of our lives. Like I'm curious, not only going back 10 or 15 years, but I'm curious like in 10 years, like who from right now in my circle right now is still doing this, who has like found other passions and moved on, who has like just out of nowhere shot out like a cannon and like became huge when they weren't even on that path. Like it's interesting in that way.
Yeah. So much can change in
Yeah.
so little time, which I guess leads me to one more thing for you from me.
Yeah, of course.
And that's, what do you hope for in the future? What do you want to be doing, 10 years from now?
I mean, I want to be like respected in the field. Like that's kind of what I've always said, is like I want people to hear my name and be like, oh wow, he made these things that really changed me as a person, or helped me as a person, or like where people can say like, oh my god, you have done so much, and like I respect your contributions to the field. And that manifests in a lot of different ways. Like I want to direct theater. I want to be in a Broadway show. I want to have my own Broadway show that I've directed that like that runs. But I also want to, direct TV and film, and have things that I create happen in that way. And I also want to still be able to act like through all of that, like as kind of my craft. But I mean, I guess the short answer is I really do want to direct. Because I think just because I am so visual and so rhythm and pacing focused, that is what a director really hones in on a project. And I feel like I when I've directed little things, I'm in this comedy group and we do these original comedy musicals, and I've directed a few of those, and I do find a lot of joy and fulfillment in that. So probably will be a lot more directing and a lot more acting.
I love that.
I didn't
I
even know
really
you
love that.
directed it. That's very, very cool. So I have no doubt you're going to do it.
Thank you.
So I like to ask just a couple fun questions.
Of course.
To wrap up. But one of my questions for you, given how multi-hyphenated talented you already are, what is one creative skill that maybe you don't have that someone else has that you, if you could, you would take for a day, that skill, and then what would you do with it?
Ooh, so I play like piano a little bit. There's like piano behind me, and I like have fun with that, but I'm not really a songwriter or like a music writer. And I envy composers so much because they can just write their own musical. And I love that. And so I would love to take the composing skill and write a musical. That's what I would do.
Oh, I love that.
That's
What
a
composer would you
great
steal
answer.
from?
Yeah.
What composer's powers would you take?
I mean, he's younger, but do you know Oliver Richmond
I love Oliver
I think that he has
Richmond.
such a bright future, and he is such a great composer, and I just can't believe that he hasn't written, or maybe he has, but I can't believe that it hasn't been produced like a full musical from him. I would love to see, and I open letter to Oliver that whatever his musical is, I want to direct it.
And open letter from us, Oliver, come on the show. Oliver and I did we did a thing about a year ago together, like a write and perform a musical in a day, put on by a friend of the show, Danny Feldman.
I remember that.
And one of the most insanely talented people I've ever had the privilege of knowing.
Yeah, I'm so obsessed with his just his speed and clarity. I'm just, love it. And I think I just have no doubt that he will have amazing musicals.
I love
Okay,
that.
well, I have one more question, especially given the theme of music that we've been talking about. And that is, if your life had a soundtrack or a theme song, what would it be and why?
Oh my goodness. Okay, I was never into Beyonce until like this year. And now I'm like just so into Beyonce, and she was like my top artist on Spotify Wrapped. I love Cozy by Beyonce. I think that was my top song this year, was Cozy by Beyonce, or maybe it was Cuff It, but I love Cozy by Beyonce. And I think I'm learning to be comfortable in my skin and cozy with who I am. And so maybe I think there's different chapters that have different songs, but maybe that's my chapter right now.
Oh, I love that. And that's a really wholesome and wonderful way to wrap things up. Larry, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I want to pass the mic over to you so you can let folks know where to keep up with you, what you've got going on, anything you want to plug. The floor is yours.
Okay, well, I am at Larry Saperstein on Instagram and TikTok. And then my podcast, which is called Let's Talk About That with Larry Saperstein and Jacob Lottie. We have new episodes every Monday. And that is also on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube at Let's Talk About That Pod.
I love that. So
go
folks,
check it out.
Go tune in to Let's Talk About That on Mondays. And So What's Your Process on Thursdays. And you've got a great listening diet throughout the week.
Yes, a full week of content.
Larry, thanks again for coming on. This has been wonderful.
Thank you.
And great to see you as always, my friend.
Yeah, I have enjoyed this so much. Thank you.
So much. You guys asked such great questions.
Oh, appreciate it. All right.
All
We'll see
right.
ya.
Have a good one.
Bye.
So, Allie, what'd you think of Larry?
I love Larry. I am a huge Larry fan. Sign
Mhm.
me up for the fan club. I love Larry. And can I just say, I was fascinated by how different his process was from a lot of the other people we have had
From
on.
everyone we've had on, it's completely different.
It's all like based in movement and blocking. And I love that he was like, the glasses in Dear Evan Hansen was what got him. But it's not the same. Like everybody else seems
Yeah.
to have like their thing that brings them in. You know, it's the script and the words, or it's, you know, the costuming, it's whatever. But he's like, yeah, it kind of depends. Go with the flow. I merge with it. I don't even think about it. And I was like,
he finds his in where he finds it.
I also love that you remember Makita.
Yes, from
And she
season
talked
1.
about her. I think I asked her, what is it, if someone followed you for a day, what is it that they would find like most surprising about your day? Something to that effect. And she said, how much I meditate. And I feel like he has something like that. He has his time where he comes in 15, 30 minutes early, and he has that quiet meditation time where he talked about that's his centering time.
Yeah.
And then he can go with it. And, you know, that comes from his theater training and other things like that. And I think that would surprise people about him as well, because he's a very effervescent and outgoing person. And I really love, and I love that Happy Feet was what inspired him to take up tap.
What was that character's name? Mumble, I think, was the name of the penguin.
Remember.
And I
did
love
watch
that.
it with you a few times, but I didn't probably watch it as closely as you may have.
I think I watched that movie maybe like 50 times.
Yeah, it was a lot. I definitely remember it.
But no, just going back to you know, his taking time before the show. It was, you know, because as we touched on, you know, he and I worked on a show together this past year doing Dear Evan Hansen out in Salt Lake City. And it pretty much every time I came in before a show, he was in his corner of the dressing room, and he's, you know, he's got his headphones on, or he's just sitting there and he's just quietly prepping and getting ready for the show.
Because you do the same thing.
Well, I do, but I do it in a very different way. Well,
yeah.
I try and get there early as well. But, you know, where he takes it right at the beginning.
Yeah.
I go in and I take it at the end. So it was this fun little dynamic of, by the time he was getting into his headspace and he was like, all right, I'm good. And, you know, maybe chatting with some other people in the dressing room, I was like, okay, my earbuds are in. I don't want to
tuning out the world.
I'm tuning out the world.
Everybody.
We had a really it was funny. One of the guys in the dressing room would ask me questions like 5 or 10 minutes before, and I'd hear him say something to me and I'd go, huh? And he like asked, I'm like, oh yeah, no, for sure. And I'd answer, and I'd like put my
go away.
I'm locking
go
it
away.
And it was always fun. But yeah, Larry's
he's a really cool guy.
Larry's great.
He's very grounded as well.
Yeah.
And I love that he you know, I love that he seems very self-aware.
Yeah.
His comment about, you know, really sort of being into Beyonce now, and that's a soundtrack for his life now. But there are different stages and phases, and that changes. I think that's very insightful.
It is.
And true. I think it's very true. But I love that he picked up. That was like he immediately was that self-aware about that.
Yeah, I will share one funny story.
Okay, all right.
When we were doing that show together, if you head to either of our Instagram pages, you can find this. If you know anything about Dear Evan Hansen, at the end of Act 1, there's this big dramatic scene where everyone comes out and sings "You Will Be Found," which is this big, heartfelt song, and it's supposed to be super emotional. And he comes out to show me something on his phone, and about halfway through the run, we just started taking pictures during this. So he would have his phone, and he'd be showing me what was on his phone, but he'd just be taking the selfies.
Oh, I love it.
And on the very last show, he hit record, and he just recorded the entire like 2 minutes on stage. And so you see him go, "Have you seen this?" And my head pops in and I go, "Oh, what's that?" So just a fun little one, and
is that posted on his
you can check either of our Instagram pages, and you can find that video. It's a lot of fun. But anyways, with all that being said, thank you so much for tuning in for this great new episode with Larry on So What's Your Process. We're so glad that you're here, and welcome to season 2. Thank you all for tuning in, and make sure to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications so you never miss a new upload wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast. And with all that being said, Allie.
Also check out Let's Talk About That, which it is really a very funny and irreverent podcast. And if you want a little lightness in your life, it's a great one. And until next time, we will see you on So What's Your Process?
Bye-bye.